I used to live in a small house in the western suburbs of Pennsylvania. It wasn't anything special, 1 floor, 2 bedrooms, and a narrow hallway leading to the laundry room. But there's one strange thing I've never forgotten. The door at the end of the hallway. It was always shut tight, never opened, and I was never allowed to go near it. I remember the first time I asked my mom about it. I was only around 6 years old. She simply said, "It's just an old storage room. The lock's broken. It's dangerous. Don't go in, okay?" After that, she always closed the door whenever I got too close. But the strange part was, I never saw anyone go in or come out of that room. Never saw anything being taken in or out either. Whenever I walked past the hallway at night, I always felt like something was standing just behind the door, pressing its hand against the wooden surface, waiting for me to stop. When I was 7, my grandfather passed away. Our family gathered at our house to prepare for the funeral. That night, 2 of my older cousins slept over. The 3 of us laid out blankets on the living room floor, right next to the window facing the backyard. Around 2 a.m., I woke up because of a strange sound. At first, I thought it was dripping water, but then I realized it was footsteps, very soft, like someone walking barefoot on wooden floorboards. I lay still, pretending to be asleep, but the sound grew clearer. It didn't walk fast, but rather slowly, creeping closer toward the living room. I turned my head toward the hallway. The hallway light suddenly flicked on, then off. On again, then flickered repeatedly. It blinked 3 times, then went out completely. Everything sank into darkness. I sat up from the blanket. In the faint light from the window, I could clearly see. The door at the end of the hallway was wide open. I didn't understand why. Mom always locked it every night. I carefully stood up, walking slowly toward the hallway. Every step creaked against the wooden floor. There was no light, no sound, only a damp, cold smell and a thin breeze flowing out from that pitch-dark room. I was about to call out to my dad, but right at that moment, something stuck its head out of the room. I froze. It had a human head, but long and distorted, hairless. The skin was pale, almost translucent in the dim light. Its neck tilted unnaturally to one side, like it had been broken. It didn't move, but its eyes were wide open, staring straight at me, unblinking. I couldn't scream. My throat felt like it was clamped shut. Only when the head tilted slightly, as if it was inspecting me more closely, did I let out a blood-curdling scream and bolted straight to my parents' room. I dove into their bed, sobbing so hard I couldn't speak. They jumped up and checked the whole house. Nothing. The hallway door was shut, the lock still intact. They told me it was a dream, that I was too scared from the funeral, that the lights flickered because of a bad bulb. But I knew what I saw wasn't a dream, because those eyes, I could still feel them staring at me from the dark. After that night, my dad replaced the lock on that hallway door. Mom said from now on, it'll really be locked. And I never brought it up again. 15 years later, I had moved out, had a job, had my own house. I only visited home about once a year. And one summer, when I was 22, my mom asked me to help clean out that room to turn it into a storage space for books. My dad had just removed the old lock. For the first time in my life, I stepped into that forbidden room. Inside, it was empty. No boxes, no shelves, just an old, rotting wooden chair sitting in the center of the room, facing directly toward the doorway. On the chair was a shaggy, torn-up teddy bear. One eye was missing. Its neck was bound with a thin wire, and below it, on the floor, there was something that looked like dried blood. I stood there for nearly a minute. I could feel my body turning cold, vertebra by vertebra. I asked my mom, "This teddy bear, whose is it?" She glanced over, her face slightly pale. "I didn't put anything in there." That night, I slept over for the first time in years. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. Not because of a sound, not because of a nightmare, just a familiar feeling that stirred me awake. That feeling of being watched, of someone staring directly at my back, even though I was facing the wall. The room was completely silent, but the silence was so thick it felt suffocating. I lay still for a while, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But then I realized a thin, cold draft, like mist, was blowing from the end of the hallway, just like all those years ago. I knew. I wasn't dreaming, and this time, I wasn't a 7-year-old kid anymore. I looked down the hallway. That door was open again. I walked toward it, heart pounding. I shone my phone's flashlight into the room. The chair was still there, but it was empty. The bear was gone. I stood there, frozen. Then I heard breathing, right by my ear, coming from the darkness. A long, raspy, broken breath. I left the house the next morning. Since then, I've never gone back. I'm a sophomore in college, currently renting a small room near campus. The room isn't big, just enough to fit a single bed, a desk, a bookshelf, and an old wardrobe. Everything was fine until one evening, when I heard the knocking for the first time. At first, it was soft tapping, like someone gently knocking on the window glass with their finger. I live on the 3rd floor, and there's no balcony outside my window. I figured it was the wind, or a mouse scurrying across the roof. But the knocking kept coming back, at midnight at 3 a.m., just when I turned the lights off. Then one night, I was studying when the ceiling light suddenly went out. The whole room sank into darkness. There was no power, but my phone still had battery. I turned on the flashlight, and right at that moment, the knocking came again, this time from inside the wardrobe. I froze on the spot, staring at the closed wardrobe door. Then it knocked again. Knock, knock, knock. Steady, like a heartbeat. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed inside my head, each thump syncing with the pulse pounding in my temples. I held my breath, ears strained, trying to think of a logical explanation. Mice, the wind, neighbors next door. But none of it added up. It didn't sound like any random noise I'd ever heard. I backed away, one step, then another, until my back hit the desk. The ceiling light stayed off, the only source of light being my phone screen, casting a pale glow across the wardrobe. I raised the phone, shining the flashlight at the door. The beam glinted off a fine layer of dust on the wood, but otherwise, nothing looked strange. I didn't dare go near. I stood there, frozen, for almost a minute. I didn't dare open it. I pulled the blanket over myself and scooted into the far corner of the room, across from the wardrobe, where the dim glow of my phone still flickered. I curled up tightly, knees pressed to my chest, trying not to breathe too loudly. My eyes locked on the wardrobe door, where the knocking had just stopped. The air felt thick, like even the dust had stopped floating. I almost called someone, anyone, but feared even a small noise would let it know I was still awake. All night I sat like that, unmoving, listening to every faint buzzing in the silence. Only when the first light crept through the window did I dare stretch my legs and inch toward the wardrobe. The next morning, the door was still closed. I opened it, empty. I told my friends. They laughed and said I should install a camera if I was that scared. I did. Placed a mini camera right across from the wardrobe. It would alert me if there was any motion. Nothing happened the first night, but on the second night, at 2:41 a.m., I got a notification. I opened the video. No one was there. But at 2:39, the wardrobe door had creaked open about a centimeter, then stopped. I checked the lock. No sign of tampering. I stacked books in front of the door. If it opened, they'd fall. I kept recording. The next night, I woke up because I heard something fall. I turned on the light. The stack of books was scattered across the floor. The wardrobe door was slightly ajar. I started losing sleep. Every night I felt uneasy, like some pair of eyes were watching me from the darkness. One time, I decided to use my phone to record a full night. I placed it on a shelf, adjusted the angle to capture the entire wardrobe. Before going to bed, I checked everything one last time. It was all quiet. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head. The sun was already up. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and started scrubbing through the video. From 3 a.m. to 3 a.m. 6, nothing happened. I saw myself sleeping soundly, not tossing, not moving. Nothing in the room had changed. But at exactly 3:07, a face emerged from inside the wardrobe. I instantly stopped scrubbing, my heart pounded. I rewound a few seconds and pressed play. The wardrobe door opened a little more, and from the darkness inside, something crawled out. not stepping out, not sitting up. It crawled slowly, like an animal, but shaped like a human. Its face came out first, pale, sickly white, and its black eyes stared wide without blinking. The skin looked thin as paper, and I swear I saw bruised purple veins running down both sides of its temples. No hair, no lips, just cold flesh and a blank, empty stare. It didn't move, no sound. It simply stared straight into the camera for almost a full minute. I had the feeling it knew I would rewatch this part, like it wasn't looking at the lens, but right through it, directly at me. And even though I was safe, in broad daylight, I still broke into a cold sweat. Then slowly, it backed away, still crawling, dragging itself upside down into the wardrobe like it had no bones. The wardrobe door closed on its own, no sound, no bounce like it normally would. The screen returned to stillness, but I couldn't keep watching. I never slept in that room again. I moved out of that apartment the following week. I never went back. But sometimes I still hear knocking from places with no windows. I just wish I'd never installed that camera. I opened my eyes as if being pulled out of a cold, lifeless dream. I looked toward the mirror across from the bed, and my heart clenched. In the mirror, a woman was standing behind me. Her long black hair was soaked and covered her face. Her white dress was wrinkled and torn. She stood still like a statue. I whipped around. No one was there. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was closer. My name is Miles Carter, 21 years old, a third-year architecture student at a university in Oregon. I've always considered myself a realist. Ghosts, spirits, the supernatural, those things are just tools Hollywood uses to make money, nothing more. That weekend, I accepted an invite to visit my best friend Dylan's place in rural Washington. His house was an old 2-story wooden cabin, surrounded by pine trees and fog. Looked like a horror movie set, but really, it was just old and quiet. That night, the 4 of us gathered in the living room. Me, Dylan, Tyler, his cousin, and Lena, a girl from our dorm. We ate, watched horror movies, then switched to playing Truth or Dare. When it was my turn, Dylan grinned and dared me to do the summoning game. Stand in front of the bathroom mirror, turn off the lights, and say, "Bloody Mary" 3 times. I didn't hesitate. The door clicked shut behind me. I took a deep breath and stared into the cloudy mirror. Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. I waited for a few seconds. Nothing happened. No cold breeze, no breath on my neck, no strange sound. I turned on the light, opened the door, and smirked. See? Just a dumb kid's game. That night, I slept upstairs, in an old guest room with a creaky wooden floor, an armchair, and a tall mirror mounted across from the bed. When I laid down, everything seemed normal. Dylan was asleep downstairs. Tyler and Lena had gone to their rooms. I woke up at exactly 3:07 a.m. No sound, no dream, just a freezing chill across my whole body, like someone had poured ice water over me. It felt like needles pricking my skin, every cell screaming that something was wrong. I turned, instinctively glancing toward the mirror, and froze. In the reflection, standing directly behind me, was a woman. She didn't move. Thin figure, long black hair covering most of her face, a dirty white dress that looked like it came from another century. I couldn't see her eyes, just deep, empty sockets. Her lips were slightly parted, like she was whispering something I couldn't hear. I didn't dare turn around. I just stared at the mirror, praying it was an illusion. A few seconds later, she vanished, as if she had never been there. I rushed to turn on the light, heart pounding like a war drum. The room was empty, silent, but that crawling fear at the back of my neck wouldn't go away. I couldn't sleep after that, and the next morning, I didn't tell anyone, because who would believe a guy who had just scoffed at the whole summoning ritual? After I returned to the dorm, I thought I could forget what happened. But no, things slowly started to shift, quietly and unnaturally. I began to feel eyes on me every time I looked into a mirror. Not the fleeting kind of feeling. It was like something was truly there, watching me, patient and cold. Once, I took a selfie on my phone and saw a blurry face behind me in the photo. When I turned around, nothing was there. Another time, I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't moving. But in the reflection, my mouth stretched into a crooked, unnatural smile, like someone else was pulling the corners of my lips. I smashed the mirror, covered every reflective surface, but no matter where, car windows, office glass, even water in the sink. She was still there, vague, still, watching me from the other side of the reflection. I started researching Bloody Mary seriously. It wasn't just idle curiosity anymore, it was a creeping fear that had begun to take hold of me. Dozens of old articles, scattered forum posts, and fragmented records all pointed to one thing. If the ritual is performed correctly, Bloody Mary will mark you. Marking doesn't mean a typical haunting. It means being watched, being reflected through surfaces, through stairs, through your own image. Slowly, you lose your sense of self, until one day, you're replaced. I also came across a chilling detail. 3:07 a.m. is said to be the hour of her death in legend. Many victims in folk accounts reportedly woke up or vanished at exactly that time. I began filming myself each night just to be sure. I set my phone on a stand, pointing directly at my bed and the mirror. The first night, nothing strange until I replayed the footage. The video cut off suddenly at exactly 3:07. No error, no sound. The screen just turned black, as if something had stepped in. I tried again, and every time, 3:07, the recording was cut off. That night, I set the camera up again. I lay down, the nightlight dim, facing the mirror. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but the next morning, I woke up on the floor. The phone was still recording. When I played it back, I saw myself, sitting up sharply at 3:07, but I didn't look like I was dreaming. I stared at the mirror and smiled, a smile that wasn't mine, and at the very end, the reflection in the mirror was still there, staring directly into the camera, even after I stepped out of frame. Now I can't sleep in a room with a mirror. I've covered every reflective surface. But sometimes, in public places, elevator mirrors, bus windows, shop glass, I still see someone standing behind me. I turn around. No one's there. But mirrors, they never lie. I'm no longer sure if I'm still myself, or if I've already been replaced.